back to my channel. Today I want to take you through 5 things to keep in mind or remember to do when you start a cross stitch. And I've got my notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So first off, when you start a cross stitch, if you're a beginner, try to find a project that's within your skill level. If you're starting out, it might be a really good idea to start with a cross stitch kit. It'll come with all the things you need, probably except an embroidery hoop, depending on which one you get. So when you get a kit, they look a little bit like this. They come with thread, sometimes on a little card, sometimes on some just in rolls and in bits. It depends what company you buy your kit from. If it's someone on Etsy, they might have a different way of storing their thread, but they will come, generally kits come with thread. They should also then have some kind of Aida cloth or cloth on which you're actually going to do your cross stitching. In this particular kit, the project is already printed onto the cloth that you're going to cross stitch on, and that's because it's a very beginner kit. So other variations of this include like a key, which looks something like this, where you have to look at the pattern and figure out where you are on your piece of cloth, and then put the appropriate stitch depending on the symbol that you see. The third variation is if you didn't buy a kit and you just bought a pattern online, they'll typically send you a PDF file and you can print off, again, a key just like the version I just showed you, but in this case, there's like 60 pages of it. So it's quite a large cross stitch that I started a little while ago. So the next thing you'll find in most kits is some basic stitch instructions. Tips about getting started, splitting your strands, the order you should work in, and a little bit about stitch types and how to make a consistent and nice looking cross stitch. They'll typically also come with a needle. This is an embroidery or cross stitch needle, and it's blunt on the end, so it's not super sharp because you can go through the little holes in the fabric. You don't need it to pierce the fabric. Other variations, if you have a cross stitch that's not on Aida cloth, so not on the holy cloth, Aida cloth being something like this where it has prefabricated holes in it. If you're working on, say, linen, for example, then you'll have a sharper needle that can actually pierce through the linen. Once you've got all your equipment together, including an embroidery hoop, you can get started. The first thing I like to do when I get a new cross stitch project is to finish off the edges of the cloth that I'm working on. This is to prevent fraying and to stop the cloth that I need kind of disappearing as I work, because you'll find as you work around the cross stitch that you're kind of rubbing the edges and manipulating the cloth quite a lot, so it's prone to fraying. On the latest project I got, because I have now got an overlocker, I went ahead and overlocked the edge of the fabric, and you can see me doing that here. Other ways to finish the edge of the fabric, if you have just a simple sewing machine, is to use a zigzag stitch around the edges, just like a millimeter off the edge. Or alternatively, if you don't have a sewing machine and you don't have an overlocker, you can also use masking tape and just tape down the edges of the project. The next thing I like to do when I start a cross stitch is to organize all my threads. I got this lovely little box from the $2 store to store in all the little colored bits and pieces from my latest cross stitch. In all my past projects, I've organized the thread either just by keeping it on these cards and wrapping it around, so just wrapping it so it doesn't become tangled, or I've also gotten bits of cardboard and wrapped the loose bits of thread around with a little reference as to what code they're from, what color they're from. This works perfectly fine, so another variation would be using something like this, and you can get plastic versions of this off Amazon, I'm pretty sure. A good friend of mine, Alicia, who runs the company Forever in Flower, recently shared with me that she stores her thread on pegs, so I thought for this project I'd give it a shot, wrapping each individual card of color onto a peg, and then I've got them stored in this lovely little box. I'll be going overseas in about 2 weeks or so, and I think this will come in really handy traveling because everything's just in one place. It's not going to get lost or tangled up, so hopefully this system works well for me. It has so far. So another thing you need to do when you start a cross stitch, which I didn't do for the first couple of projects I did, and I think this is something that can really step up your game and prevent you from making mistakes that are really obvious, is to find the middle of your project. So you'll see here that I'm folding my Aida cloth in half and marking the row that's closest to that fold, and then stitching one single piece of black thread through that whole line and doing the same thing horizontally to mark the middle of my fabric. This just ensures that when you start from the middle point of your fabric, if you have any inconsistencies or you make a mistake, that this kind of gets pushed to the edge of your project as you get further along, rather than coming to the center of your project after having done, say, the left or right hand side and finding that parts of the image don't line up. So for this project, it's the first one I've actually consistently made the effort to start from the middle, and this is as far as I've gotten. So this is the wing of the peacock, and you'll see that my middle is here, and I've sort of stitched out from that way using the biggest colors first. So once you've found your middle, you can go ahead and start stitching. And I would recommend starting with the colors that take up the most amount of room first. And that way you can build from those colors and really make sure that you're following on from the previous color. Another tip I have is to mark off your stitches with a highlighter once you've completed that section. You might have seen before when I was showing you the key that peacock section I've highlighted out in orange. That's just to let me know, I can still see what the stitch symbols were, but it's let me know that I've completed that section, and also on the second page, the kind of top part of this one. So that just lets me keep track of the parts that I've done and haven't done in case I make a mistake and I need to go and refer back. In previous projects, I've done this with like black texture, which is not really a good idea because you end up blocking out the stitch symbols, so you can't go back and double check maybe a mistake you've made or if the color was correct. A highlighter is usually the way to go. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I'll hopefully be back again next week or the week after with another video taking you through one of my latest sewing projects, and it will be back to the classic sewing. I find cross stitch is a good palette cleanser for if I'm not feeling super inspired or don't have a lot of time to go ahead and sew an item of clothing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.